So, I hope you enjoyed the break. We will now continue with the next interesting talk by Eva Hoffmann, Emilie Herkommer, and Thomas Wallnick. And they will talk about papers and collections at the Department of Contemporary History, Modeling and Description. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So, my colleagues Emilie Herkommer, Thomas Wallnick, and I want to present our currently ongoing project at the Department of Contemporary History. So, we're the second contemporary history team here. Our project started in spring 2023 and will end in autumn or winter 2024. This means we are halfway through and therefore able to show you some findings we already had, but also tell you what we are currently working on and what we hope to achieve in the next few months. Not only the three of us are working at this project, but also our colleagues at PHAIDRA services, at the University Library, Beate Pampal at the faculty, Markus Stumpf is very involved as well, and many others who support us with their expertise. Yes. So in my introduction, I will outline the different collections we're working with. Next, Emilie Herkommer will tell you more about our work with the AI-based software Transkribus for text recognition. It was already mentioned today. Next, we elaborate on the archival description record RNAB and show you how we want to manage our data with Gobi. And Gobi is also our choice for presenting our collection, which will be stored in PHAIDRA. Last but not least, Thomas Wallnick will discuss how machine learning will enhance our project. So, at the Department of Contemporary History at the University of Vienna, we have a vast collection of documents. We call it archive because it contains mostly written objects, such as personal papers, correspondences, and newspaper articles. But technically speaking, it's a collection. It is a vital source for material for historical research, especially for research on the 20th century. The material differs with regard not only to its legal status, but also to its state of description, storage, and publication. This is why 1 year ago, we planned to develop a process that would enable us to work at the different stages of digitization of the collections at our department. As has been said, the project started in 2023 and should be finished by the end of 2024. The goal is to provide a workflow for the description, storage, processing, and publication of the different collections in our department, but possibly also for other collections or projects. So before we talk about the different parts in our first outline of the workflow, I want to present the three collections we are working with in this project. The biggest collection is the so-called Gaupresse-Archiv, which is actually hosted by the Contemporary History Library and very well looked after by Markus Stumpf and his team. The Gaupresse-Archiv consists of about 200,000 newspaper extracts, which have been collected by the so-called Gauleitung of the NSDAP in Vienna. Most of the newspaper extracts are snippets glued on white paper with the name of the newspaper and the date of publication at the top of the page. The Gaupresse-Archiv has already been published online, as you can see here. This is a recent screenshot, and hosted by an external company. And now the database has to be relocated. The data should be stored at PHAIDRA. And we also want to renew the text recognition and the language processing that had been made, I think, about 10 years ago. The second collection of this project are the records of our archive at the department itself. So until now, the information we have is stored in 10 office binders, We have about 1,500 inventory numbers, and so if people want to access our archive or our collection, they have to email us right now, and we have to search through these binders. So this is a great way for us now to have a look at our inventories. We have, already said that. And so we're working, developing a workflow which can be incorporated in the daily task of the people caring for our collections, and also standardizing our archival records and publishing them so they can be easily accessible. The third collection is the estate of Austria's famous journalist Hugo Portisch. This collection contains his written estate, so mostly correspondence and typewritten manuscripts from the second half of the 20th century. So the main challenge here is, well, first some legal restrictions, but then also the text recognition in Transkribus. So mentioning Transkribus, I'm handing over to Emily Herkommer.
So regarding Transkribus, first of all, we want to mention the great support we're getting from Martin Gasteiner, who's unfortunately not here today, but we still thank him a lot for the support we get. So Transkribus is a platform for optical character recognition, OCR, layout analysis, and structure recognition of historical documents, and it is freely accessible. Transkribus uses artificial intelligence to convert machine or handwritten text into digital text. It combines advancements from AI research over the last 10 years in the field of image recognition and natural language processing. First, the structure and layout of the text are recognized, taking into account individual lines and non-textual elements. Then an AI-supported text recognition model is used to convert the handwritten characters into digital text. There's already a whole range of publicly available models, for example, German Kurrent, but also for different languages and eras. Based on the principles of deep learning, users can alternatively train their own model for their text. To do so, a certain number of documents must be transcribed manually, so the software learns which handwritten characters can be assigned to which digital characters. However, it is also possible to use Transkribus for manual transcription only. Once the text has been digitized, metadata can be added, and this allows users to assign keywords or tags, for example, and documents can also be assigned in collections, and afterwards exported in PDF, XML, or TEI files. So the first part of our workflow also consists of the character recognition with Transkribus. Our main goal here is to ensure the searchability of documents with keyword searches. Within the PHAIDRa, the recognition of newspaper articles with the OCR is largely successful, and the articles are searchable. It is not our objective to have a perfect transcript. Instead, we want to make sure that keywords within the documents are recognized so people can find the articles by searching for the keywords. We tested approximately 600 pages, which were written both in Antiqua but also Fraktur, and the OCR of Transkribus worked very well within these pages. Sometimes we have pretty good transcripts, but sometimes the material is not so good, and we have to do layout training maybe. It's also still a work in progress. But to show you some examples. So here we use the Transkribus OCR default program and layout program PHAIDRacon'. The transcription, the heading, date, and newspaper reference are searchable. The metadata is, you're able to read it, and this is what a large part of the Gaupressearchiv looks like. Here, there's one example where you don't get the heading right, so the green parts show the heading. This should be here. But still, the transcript is good enough to do research through keywords. The layout recognition also plays an important role, since the model chosen for the layout recognition has an influence on the quality of the text recognition and can decide whether the character recognition is working well or not. There are several models of layout recognition, each specializing on different purposes, for example, detecting blocks rather than lines, or focusing on lines rather than blocks. And we run some tests to see which layout works best for us. We tested block detection in Kraken, and there are no significant differences, so we found Kraken to be slightly better, and we went with that. Regarding the metadata, there are still some challenges. So the name of the newspaper, the date or place, but also the title are considered metadata, and the quality of metadata in the documents is sometimes not sufficient for reliable recognition. The Gaupressearchiv is already a published database. Nevertheless, the metadata is only partially available, and not every article has sufficient metadata. We are currently working on solutions to ensure the extraction of metadata, like assigning coordinates to the area where the metadata will be extracted, but this is still in progress. Also, maybe machine learning could be a solution for that. We will talk about that later. So another big part of our project is the Hugo Portisch collection. It consists of 27,000 pages. 3,000 of them are handwritten, and they are posing more the problem. So the 24,000 pages typewritten are not really a problem. But within the 20th century, the handwritten text recognition in Transkribus is in general more difficult, since there has been less training material yet, and also the handwriting is less standardized and more personal than it was in earlier eras. Almost every of the 3,000 pages has a different author, and therefore the handwritten text recognition in Transkribus is difficult and time-consuming. And training a custom model is also not very effective, because you need a big collection of the same handwriting. In addition, Transkribus published so-called transformer models, which cannot be further trained by the user, but generally deliver good results. Since almost every page has a different hand, it could be useful to bundle similar handwritings and try which model works best. We tested the Text Titan and German Kurrent model, although the quality of the results for both models were very mixed, so there's no favorite. The Text Titan was trained with several European languages, which means that German or English texts are often not recognized as such, and Transkribus provides the suggestion in a different language. But also with the Transkribus model German Kurrent, some pages could be read almost perfectly, others not at all, so it really depends on the material. And organizing the manuscripts according to visual similarity would have the advantage that models could be tested in a more targeted manner, and we will do this in the beginning of next year. I will also show you some examples how this looks like. So we did this analysis with Text Titan. The transcription is kind of good and sufficient for keyword search. In comparison, this is also Text Titan, but you cannot read one word on the right side. And here we have German Kurrent. It is also sufficient for keyword search and a pretty good transcript. And the second example as well, you cannot read a word, so it really depends on which material you have. Okay, thank you.
So for standardizing our metadata, especially the metadata, or like our indexes, to say the least, our archival records, we are using the RNAB, the Ressourcenerschließung mit Normdaten in Archiven und Bibliotheken. It is a set of rules for describing resources in archives and libraries by using authority data. The RNAB basically builds on different standards of archival description, such as DAX, EAD, ISADG, record in context, RDA. I will not elaborate on this further, but I think it's important to mention as this should ensure compatibility. The RNB is a standard in German, which has not been translated yet. And it's really designed for its use in German-speaking context, but of course it's possible to describe resources of any language. We chose to use the NRB because, first of all, it's a quite current project, and it involves a lot of recent developments, and it's really state-of-the-art. Secondly, it's widely acknowledged in the German-speaking countries. And third, it's easily employable. And this is especially important for us as we are a small team, and most of our positions are temporarily or just reserved for students, as Emily's and my positions. So we can employ an archival standard without going through extensive training. So we translated these RNB rules into an Excel spreadsheet. Some of these fields are obligatory, others might need authority data. As you can see, for example, in D5, and what is this, J? Yeah. The authority data we usually refer to is the GND, the Gemeinsame Normdatei, which is hosted by the German National Library. As you can see here, we're using the GND for identifying persons and organizations, but also keywords. For the technical realization of the NRB, Raster is adapting Gobi for us. Gobi is an open source software for cataloging archival records and presenting them. We decided not to develop a tool ourselves, as this would mean constant maintenance and probably less compatibility. Instead, we're adapting Gobi, and this is not too much of a stretch because Gobi is based on the EAD, the encoded archival description, and the NRB we are using is based on the EAD. So here you can see the different, like on the right side, you can see the different fields that Gobi is using for cataloging. And as the RNB is based on the EAD, we were able to map these standards. Yes, we like spreadsheets. And Raster and his colleagues are currently working on programming these changes, for example, naming the fields as supposed in the NRB and allowing to duplicate fields where this is intended by the NRB. As the metadata can be downloaded as an EAD file, as you can see here on the left, it should also be compatible with Scope, the system the university library, the archive of the University of Vienna uses, and with the library system ALMA. The digitized objects will be stored in PHAIDRA, but presented in Gobi. We can already show you a very first version of the Gobi viewer, although this is work in progress. This is an example from the Gaupressearchiv, where you can see both the digital scan and the transcript. We have not uploaded much data yet, except for testing, as we are focusing on developing a workflow for the different collections. In the next few weeks and months, we will further be working on the import of data from Transkribus and from these Excel spreadsheets to Gobi, and also the question of metadata extraction, is something we're working on. So I'm handing over to Thomas to tell us more about machine learning.
Many thanks. What we've heard so far are the first steps in an overall workflow. The workflow is the goal, the content of the project that we're talking about. So we submitted this project about 8 months, 10 months ago, with the explicit goal to produce a pipeline. This pipeline, in large parts, has already been described. It goes from taking existing scans or producing them, doing OCR, then thinking about the modeling of the respective metadata, thinking about the system which shall contain and store the data, and then think about the display and the presentation. Here come some considerations about the further steps that we do not consider as prioritary as the steps I just mentioned, but that we want to think about and that we want to test with regard to additional processing of the data. One is the use of topic modeling on the full texts of the individual collections. Topic modeling is a sort of probabilistic method for large textual corpora which calculates the probability of two words occurring together often, or basically not two, but usually groups of 10. This is used to make large language corpora accessible. An example is NewsEye, a large newspaper digitization project in which also we, University of Vienna, National Library, were involved, and which tends to make large corpora like several thousands of issues of newspapers which don't have structural data. So you don't have the titles, you don't have authors, you don't have tags, accessible by defining topics. One of the usual examples is if you have dog and bone and walk, this is going to be one topic, and if you have home run at baseball and touchdown, this is another topic, and topic modeling allows you to link those bags of words, as they call it, to the individual documents. In the case of the Gau Pressearchiv, we have to expect that most of this is going to be toxic, but nonetheless, we're going to have bags of words which will allow, and I will not fantasize about what those bags of words can be, but still it's a way of accessing snippets of text through the probability of words occurring in that piece together. This is something we can do and we want to do, knowing that most probably we will not have very clean full texts. My colleagues already mentioned that with the amount of testing that we can afford, we get good results, but results that will still remain within the range of the 1%, 2% character error rate, which Transkribus tends to produce. And we all know that one character on 100 can make a big difference. So what I'm trying to say here is that we will test, but do not have too high aspirations and expectations with regard to named entity recognition. This is something we thought we should try in order to structurally and systematically pull out place names and person names out of these large corpora. However, we must be aware that there are limits to this. Topic modeling is a sort of alternative approach to allow users ways into the corpus. Ways into the corpus that are not coming through the archival structure itself. Now, and here I'm talking particularly about the so-called Gau Pressearchiv, which is stored in a hierarchical way, and only part of which has been fully described. Now, so this is one of the main challenges that we're facing now. You saw on the slide that the metadata, which newspaper, which date, sometimes turn out well, sometimes not really. And we're thinking of ways to automatically process those transcriptions in order to automatically link them to the data set. If we manage to do that, we still don't know. This would be another way to access the material. And a third way that we're about to test right now is the following. This structure in Catons Mappenakten has been depicted in the call marks, that is also the file names. So the 200,000 images of the Gaupresse-Archiv that has been pulled out of the old database and is now on our servers. This is a key to the archival structure. In addition to that, there are contemporary inventories of the late 30s and early 40s that are related to that original order. And what we're trying to do, and this is what I mean by structural metadata of the GPA, need to be reconciled, unified, and connected with the relevant information of the contemporary indices. This is something we're going to try with the help of colleagues from the data analysis network. It's a relatively straightforward task because you need to take one data set and run it against the other. However, we are still at the beginning and we're trying to write a specification for this collaboration. I gave you a view of these call marks. I also have been granted the freedom to say some concluding words, wrapping up our efforts a little bit. I think what you've just heard from us is the outcome of a communication, of a dialogue, which we've been fostering for 1 year now, which brings together basically the different parts of the university with their competences and tries to make them collaborate according to their resources and their competences. I should say that we have to wait for the outcome, but for now, what makes me think positively about this is that we have these resources and that by bringing them together, we can create the necessary small groups that can push the agenda forward in those specific instances. My colleagues from the Contemporary History Department are the pillars of this because they keep the overview, but one day they talk with Martin Garstein about the decision which next model to train or to go on with layout recognition training, or rather leave that be, or compare the numbers they have gotten out of the different model trainings for the handwritten text recognition. Next day they talk with Rastislav Hudak about the modeling and the implementation of the RNRB, and another day they talk with me about the way to formulate these additional specifications, with which then I talk to Drew Dimery from the Data Science Network and try to install a little bit of collaboration. I should say that I'm also involved in the teaching of the Master's Digital Humanities, which is intersecting with the master programs of data science and business analytics. So we really try to make use of the synergies that arise from three very diverse groups of students with different skills and always in search of a little money, to put it that way, to have them help us with what we can't do that easily. Second, so this is a collaborative project, and it can only work as such, and it can very nicely work at a large university as ours. Second takeaway point, much of our efforts, your efforts, also mine, goes into meticulously documenting every step we take. This comes out of the awareness that many other projects ask themselves the same questions. They ask themselves, okay, with this specific raw material, which model should I use? Are there any experiences? Should I use Gobi or should I develop something new? So at the end of the project, in whatever form, a paper, a white paper, something that we just share within the community of the university, there will be not just a result, but also a documentation of how we got there at this specific point in time. We all know that things develop very quickly, and that especially in AI, what is state of the art today is not so anymore tomorrow. However, this is a deliberate outcome that we want to deliver along with the result. And the final remark, 2 days ago, I was assisting an online meeting by the FFG about the newest Digital Europe calls. And I was confronted with a thought that I hadn't had before by someone saying, well, you can also define innovation, which is the buzzword you hear everywhere. You can also define innovation as something that's not new on the face of the earth, but something that's new to a specific institution. Gobi is there, RNB is there, Transkribus is there, regex is there, Gensim is there. So it's not that we're developing something new. On the contrary, we all know that there's far too many tools, far too many applications, wheels invented anew out there. So the innovation, innovative potential of what we're doing, if we then want to call it that way. But I think it's important to stress this, because this is not just infrastructural work that serves, research to be carried out, but it's intellectual work which has to do very much with desk search and looking at intellectual efforts made by others already. So if we want to frame it as innovation, I think here's the good reason for framing it that way. And in that, I thank you.
Thank you for this quite interesting presentation. And we have now seen that digital humanities is nothing that reading a book digital. So it's really a lot of things and a lot of new things, and integrating a lot of technical improvements and also new technical infrastructure ideas in a new way. And I'm very happy to have you here with this expertise. Are there any questions? So I have one question to you. We have seen now very different technology are involved, and you are now have to get into all this different kind of technology. How challenging is this?
Well, at some point very challenging, especially because we have quite different collections, as you've seen, and they are at very different stages or very different points in this process of digitization. We have these office binders, and then we have the documents that have already been published online. So having different materials and having very different technology can be challenging, but on the other hand, there are so many people out there who help us with the expertise, and especially at PHAIDRA services, there are so many people with a very specific knowledge. So this is also helping them, because as Thomas said, one day we are talking to Martin Gastainer about this, and then we're talking to Rastislav Hudak about this. So it's also, there's a person for everything. So that's quite helpful, actually, I would say.
Yeah, so it doesn't get boring. That's very good.
Yeah.
If I may add, one of the things that changes when you switch from the humanities to mindset digital is that it's not enough to know a book by its cover. Often, and usually it shouldn't also be allowed to just know a book by its cover or a review. With all the technical solutions, you need to use your hands. You need to spend a week to get your head around what this is doing. And this is one of the reasons I find this project important, our collaboration important, and I'm very grateful for you to offer us the possibility to speak here. All the great infrastructure we have can only start being integrated to our everyday life if we confront ourselves with the nitty-gritty issues that arise when you use it. So it's my answer to the question is that not a bit much. It's easy to have an overview of 5, 6, 7 tool solution models, but then it is a lot of work and it requires a lot of discipline to test with a pen in your hand to create an output that is a good output, but at the same time reflects the learning process that you've gone through.
Yes, thank you. And also from a comment from my side, so as infrastructure provider, as a provider for something what's called repository for long-term archiving, I'm very happy about this kind of project because this shows this archiving is not something what you then have somewhere on a hard drive. This is a living thing. So, and these, all these things what we are doing is all about the data that we can use and reuse the data. That's the important thing. And these are the projects that shows you very good what we are doing all together, cooperatively and interdisciplinary. Thank you.
We've heard today that there will come a person for as data steward at the faculty. How will the person be incorporated in the project? Is there any steps planned?
We are very lucky to be added to the Vice Rectorate's data stewardship program. Our colleague Corbinian Grünwald starts on the 1st of December and will go through a 2-3 month onboarding phase in which he will be spending a lot of time with the data stewardship team, which prepares him to some degree for starting the certificate course in the fall. So he's going to be busy. Other than that, we advertised the post with a view to different matters than the ones we're treating here, which is basically web development on the one hand and API development on the other. So you know how large our faculty is, and he's not going to be bored. And it's going to be like Beate Pampal on the one hand, Teresa Karlova on the other, and myself on the third to say, let's see how to distribute additional tasks and charges. I do not really think that he will be involved much in this project, which is going to run until the end of 24, and I'm very confident that we're going to get somewhere. But it's mostly, he will hear about it, he will perhaps assist in one or the other meeting, but he will not be taking larger responsibility from my view.
I was just going to ask, you said you were sort of, I think you said very copiously documenting the process and the methodologies and the different tools that you're using and the outcomes and that sort of thing. Is that something that you are then making open and available to other people sort of internationally and using, I guess, the principles of open research with that? And is that something where there is actually an available community happening around this so people can learn from each other's experience? It seems great the way you're running the project, not just with the outcomes of the project you're doing, but what future projects can learn from that and everything else. I just wondered whether you are, in that sense, sort of publishing in an open science way the methodologies and everything that you're documenting.
Yeah, okay. We are, yes, I guess we are planning on doing that, yes. Right now, it's a process that is made very publicly in the University of Vienna. Like we have various universitarian collections, and we hope that this workflow and also this way of starting a project could be an outline for other projects as well, and also collections, like the smaller universitarian collections. And yes, we are also planning on publishing this for a wider audience. Yes. And I think what is especially interesting, or what we found was especially interesting for colleagues we already spoke to, and like this informal meetings, was how much resources do you need? How long does it take? Like these very hard facts. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions?
There was another question. You mentioned Gobi beforehand. Gobi is like the predecessor to Kitodo. That's still developed by the SLUP in Dresden right now, or let's say the consecutive project. What's the benefits of Gobi over the next following project, and why did you choose that project actually?
Why we chose Gobi?
Yeah. What were the benefits of Gobi over like the follow-up, like the Kitodo project?
I think this is a question for Rasta actually, because he is the one, deciding on that.
Kitodo is, I don't think it's a following project. The Gobi was developed as open source, but it was not a community project. And the company Intranda, which is behind Gobi, I think it did not allow the community to develop it as a community project, so it just split. And Kitodo is the community version of Gobi. But both are being developed further. And also Gobi version is developed further as open source. And we choose Gobi because we are using Gobi currently at the University of Vienna. And there was there was this synergy that when we can in this project learn and develop know-how around Gobi, which we can then use also to support our colleagues from the library which are using it, so on. So that's why we choose this version. Yes, there was the university library is digitizing books and maps and stuff using Gobi.
I would like to add that initially we didn't plan on using Gobi, and enlarging the circle of the people who were at the table talking to us, we realized that we pointed to this by my colleagues, for example, from the archive, saying, why don't you look at this? And when we discovered that there was this EAD compatible plugin for Gobi, Asta spent quite some time this summer to look for arguments pro and contra, so for using Gobi with the plugin versus developing something anew, which was what we had intended earlier. And then we had a larger meeting where we presented the arguments, took a collaborative decision, recorded the arguments, and this is now just so you know what we mean concretely. Is a collection of minutes and protocols in uCloud, where we just store this, also for everyone to look up. So it's nothing that just we decide, but I mean, in the small circle, we try to figure out a little bit later maintenance, effort of new components. So it's, I mean, the point is you have to take a decision at some point, and there are always arguments pro and con, and here we thought it was the better idea. And so far, given that there is this viewer functionality that we also need, and there's the possibility to plug in the modeling of the RNAV, we said, well, why not? So what would be the arguments against?
The point why the University of Vienna uses Gobi is because there was no Kitodo. I know that because Pamela Stückler, she stayed with me because I was one of the first users in Austria. Yes, and much of all the users in Austria, they stayed with me. And there was no Kitodo. This is the...
Because we had to take some decisions. I'm from the Nikolaus Hein und Kurt Zentrum at Anton Bruckner University, and we having started a digitization project right now, like this summer actually, and I was involved in the decision process making too. And so originally it was intended to use Kitodo, and so we had a closer look at Kitodo and had some presentations with Andre Eckert actually, whom I met like some days ago at the NFDI for Culture convention online some days ago again. And we really weren't satisfied by this. Then we were asking our librarian at the Bruckner University, Agnes Drucker, and she said, oh, there's a huge Gobi community in Austria, even in Upper Austria, so why don't you have a look? So it's the same like you said, have a look at this. And I was researching further, and finally we were, let's say, going to Nuremberg to the Germanisches Nationalmuseum, and we found out about Whisky, what would be something rather similar, but like connected a little more like in the graph area. So it's a little, we were thinking about linked open data actually, therefore I was asking.
We had a conversation with Josef Wang in Innsbruck, who built an Whisky-based RNAV implementation. So this was basically the first start of the project, and we then had the conversation with Rasta and Rahman and said, this is a little bit complicated, and then you have all the identifiers that are from Innsbruck.
Mm-hmm.
We will not build this anew. So we thought a little bit about it and had a look around what's out there. And yeah, so what we do now is not necessarily linked data, but we could go on talking about the advantages and pitfalls of that in cultural heritage modeling anyway. So I think it's a good thing, but it's not imperative.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe also a quick comment from my side, because I also was involved from the side of the infrastructure. And it's always the question of which kind of tool you're using. And if you have several tools, and we have now a lot of tools also running here at our university, it's also the question of what you can sustain. How many tools you can sustain, and how many things you can bring together. Because when we are now choosing for each project a new tool, then at least in 1.5 years, we are running out of resources to sustain everything. So that's also the question, what we have to make the decision based on several limitations as well. Any other question or comments? Then thank you again for this great presentation.